This is Africa 24. Thank you for joining us. In this special edition of the interview with Mr. Donald Kaberuka, Chairman and Managing Partner of SouthBridge Group, we will look at the challenges of making intra-African trade a reality. Your Excellency, welcome to Africa 24.
Thank you.
You participated at the African Caucus 2025 in Bangui alongside finance ministers and central bank governors. What were the specific expectations of the international flying of Southbridge Corporation, and what message did you convey on behalf of the private sector?
No, I did not simply convey the challenges of the private sector. I convey the challenges of Africa as a whole, because this caucus is a once-in-a-year event on how Africa relates to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And so it is an occasion to look at the landscape today. And the landscape today is complicated, whether it is the private sector or is the public sector. And so I'm happy that the theme selected was around human capital, innovative finance, infrastructure. Those are exactly the kind of things we should be discussing now. Because for a long time, the development of Africa had been, to an extent, too dependent on the outside world. But now there's a new landscape out there. The acceleration of disinterest in global development, in global issues. And so the opportunity here was to discuss how do you transform Africa in this new landscape, of which inter-African trade is one.
You talk about intra-African trade, which still remains low despite the EFCFTA. In your view, what is still holding us back? Is it politics? Is it logistics? Or it's still the problem of mindset for Africans?
Now, first of all, the issue of numbers, which I think are not well understood. In some regions of Africa, intra-regional trade is actually almost as high as some parts of Southeast Asia. That is the case of East Africa, Southern Africa, even West Africa before the crisis. There are two parts of Africa which are very, very much behind. So Central Africa, where we are, is one of them. It's very low. They'll be less than 2%. North Africa is another. They'll be less than 2%. And so the average you hear of 14, 15% is because of the very low numbers in places like Central Africa and North Africa. And so what is holding behind? It is a whole range of things. I can assure you that tariffs is not one of them. This might come to you as a surprise because the Continental Free Trade Area is based on the attempt to reduce tariffs. But actually, there are many other restrictions on trade. One of them is payment systems. We trade with each other through foreign currencies. Another is movement of people. Another is non-tariff restrictions. And obviously, there are things which are obvious. Do you know how difficult it is to come to Bangui from some African capitals? Because air travel within Africa is extremely costly, because we have not applied the single airspace policy, which would have brought down cost of flying in Africa by 40%. So there's a whole range of things holding us behind. But in some regions of Africa, there's good progress. And I'm just hoping that in parts like where we are now, Central African region, it will come to at least average over the region, which is about 20%.
To your Excellency, economic sovereignty and inclusive industrialization are key points of African national agendas. How does your institution support this dynamic, particularly in agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and value chains?
So let's narrow this down to its essentials. The challenge our countries face is one of transformation. Okay, it doesn't matter whether it is agriculture, industry, or services. The issue is how to move up the global value chains. All right? Because we're not only having a low share of global trade, our participation is at very low level of global value chains, whether it is minerals, whether it is agriculture. So it is important to work around everything that facilitates moving up the global value chains. That's what the problem is.
The EFTB, some forecasts of the EFTB indicate that Africa will experience growth this year, but risk related to debt governance or security still weigh on the business environment. What concrete tools do you think we can use to finance the private sector despite these constraints?
So let us unpack this. Take security. I said this morning that I was very happy that the caucus is meeting here, because the Central African Republic is one of the countries in Africa which has gone through cycles of instability, military or political conflicts for almost about 25 years. Now, it is not possible to have a flourishing private sector in those circumstances. All right? Because at the end of the day, what creates opportunities is stability, is human capital, right? And low cost of doing business, which is what we are discussing here. And so the presence of the caucus in Bangui is an important signal that until we can address issues of security, stability, fragility, business cannot prosper. All right? Now, there are tools of going around this. But at the moment, I have to be honest with you that whether I go from the Sahelian belt to the Horn of Africa, fragility is a big issue. And I should add that fragility is not simply a function of war. It can be because of climate. And so I was also pleased that matters around climate finance were being discussed here.
So how do you think that the Central African Republic can capitalize on its natural resources to make the environment of business more conducive for its economy?
It has to be a stable country first, doesn't it? It has to find stability, consensus, inclusion, which I think the government is trying to do. It's a landlocked country. It's a country with a lot of challenges on infrastructure, as we heard the president himself acknowledge this morning. But I think you have to begin at first principles. The challenge for this country and similar countries in fragility is to find stability, inclusion, and consensus. And once that is done, and you bring down the cost of doing business, then everything follows.
Your Excellency, this takes us to the end of this program. Thank you for answering our questions.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gents, here comes the end of the interview with Stay tuned to Africa 24 TV.com and the app My Africa 24.